A couple of days ago, I took my 9-year-old son to IHOP. Now, I haven't been to IHOP for years, but the great advantage of going to that restaurant was I discovered that he could order off the children's menu, and I got to order off the senior menu. So I got great discounts as we were together. And then just before this conference started, I called up my sister in Southern California, and we were talking about my mom, who is 92 years old. So the reality for each one of us in the room is this is just not theory. This is life. We are living this each and every day with the people that we are connected with, whether it's in our family, whether it's at work, or in our congregations. We are all a mixture of generations. Just like we look at the diversity among many different ways, another level of diversity is to look at us across the generations. If we look at the next 20 years from 2010 to 2030, we can see the growth of the various generations. And this is just by age groups. We see that there's going to be a growth of about 12 million among those aged 0 to 19 from 2010 to 2030. From age 20 to 44, there'll be a growth of 11 million. From age 45 to 64, there'll only be a growth of 1 million among that age group. But the most dramatic growth is among those above 65. There'll be a growth of 32 million in terms of the population. In other words, we'll all look like Florida or Arizona, okay, if you think of the population of those states. If we look at the year 2012, we see that each one of the generations are at key points in their lifespan. We see the GI generation, who's age 85 plus. We see that in their youth years, they experienced the Great Depression. They fought in World War II, and so their motto for their life was God and country, patriotism and God. The pioneers, who are going to be 67 to 84 in 2012, they fought in the Korean War. Their big social movement was the Civil Rights Movement, and they were the ones that created the teenage culture of the 1950s. They were the ones that invented rock and roll music. So when you turn on classic rock for your children and their grandparents are listening to it, they say, yeah, I really enjoyed that too. That's really cool. Okay, so that the rock and roll generation. The baby boomers, aged 49 to 66, really experienced a great amount of turmoil in their youth and young adult years, from the Kennedy assassination to the resignation of President Nixon. Went through the Vietnam War, and then they experienced the counterculture movement, the Jesus movement, and the New Age movement. The postmoderns, age 31 to age 48, experienced the Challenger disaster. Many of them were in school, and those of you who are of that generation can remember being at school and actually watching that live, and that had a profound impact on that generation. They also experienced the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. And then the grunge music of the 90s and the internet revolution were two things that they helped create and form as they were growing up. The millennials, aged 13 to 30, many of them grew up with the Disney movies of the 90s. And they probably, those of you who are millennials can probably sing the lyrics from Beauty and the Beast and those different musicals, because you are able to watch videos of that multiple times, right? Maybe 100 times before the age of 10, okay? 9/11 and the Great Recession were two major events that have affected this generation, and then they have really created the whole concept of social networking. The digital generation are those who are age 12 and under. This is the generation that was born or raised right after 9/11 and have experienced, think of all the natural disasters that we've seen over the last 10 years. Almost 50% are non-white and 40% have been born outside of marriage. Electronic media dominates this generation, with the Wii, iPad, smartphones, etc., as being key components for the way that this generation interacts with one another. We also see some issues emerging from these different generations. For the GIs, the whole issue of declining health as you're over the age of 85. Many are disconnected from their churches because maybe they have moved with children or into retirement homes, or they no longer can drive or have transportation to their home churches. The question that they are dealing with is, who is going to take care of me? Who is going to take care of me? The pioneers, for them, health is more important than age. It's not what age you are that is important. It's how healthy you are is the most important. There's a focus on family and friends and the whole question of what is my legacy? What are the values, beliefs that I'm leaving behind for the next generation that's following me? The baby boomers find themselves at the height of influence in politics and in the business corporate world. Many are suffering from the Great Recession, and many have find themselves underwater, which means that their mortgage is worth more than their house is by virtue of the Great Recession. And men in their 50s are the ones who are most likely to have been laid off during the last 3 years since 2008. One major issue that they are talking about is, how do I pay for current needs? For example, if they have a child in college, and also save for the future. For postmoderns, work is seen as a vocation versus a career. A vocation, how do I find a calling in my life? Self-reliance and a lack of trust of institutions is one of their hallmarks in terms of how they view society. And one of the questions that they're wrestling with is, who is my family? And you can see that they are creating many different patterns of families among that generation. The younger millennials, we see, are in the midst of a youth boom in which their voice is being heard across the culture. For the older millennials who are in the 20s, they see that adulthood is delayed because of lack of jobs. For example, for the class of 2011, 85% of them moved home after graduation. The question that they are wrestling with is, what is my future? What is my future? The digital generation is hyper-connected through digital media. My son just came back from a bus trip for a field trip with his friends at school, the whole fourth grade class. And you imagine they were all going down the freeway on 3 buses. And one of them pulled out his Nintendo DS and hit the button that connects him to any other Nintendo DS that's around him. And soon there were 79 of them connected with each other, in effect creating their own wireless network across all 3 buses as they were driving down the freeway. Hyper-connectivity. The most diverse in terms of ethnicity and family systems. And the question that they are wrestling with is, who am I? Who am I? Now, there's 3 other terms I just want you to hear. One is, that affects all of us, is this idea of elsewhere. If you ask us, where do we live? You may say, oh, I live in Nashville, or I live in Dallas, or I live in San Antonio, but probably where you really live is elsewhere. Because of all the electronic devices that we surround ourselves with, it's, in fact, some of you are probably really itching to check your email right now. And if you want to do that, go ahead and tweet someone and tell them something that you liked in terms of what's going on here. But elsewhere means that we are constantly connected with people not in the same room in terms of face-to-face. And so elsewhere is where many of us live on a constant basis. The Great Recession has had a great impact. In an 18-month period, over 8 million people lost their jobs. The average value of a house fell by 30%, and the Dow lost 7,000 points. Nationwide, nearly 1 in 4 houses was underwater by the start of 2011. Nearly 1 in 7 mortgages was in arrears or in foreclosure. And the Great Recession hit most, I said earlier, men in their 50s and young adults who are trying to enter into the marketplace. The last term I want to share with you, I found very interesting as I was doing research on this, is leisure time. Leisure time. And what is leisure time? Well, it's blurring of the boundaries between work and leisure. In other words, when are you at work and when are you at home? When are you at work, when are you at play, etc. In other words, because we have all these devices, we are constantly checking our emails for the latest update, if someone wants us to do something, wants to connect with us, etc. And so we're always connected. We're always on. It's very rare if you have a smartphone. And because you have a smartphone, people expect you to get back to them immediately, right? Along with this is there's no longer a concept of secular versus religion. In other words, spirituality is the form that people are thinking throughout their lives. So it's not just going to church on Sunday that's important. It's how does my spirituality connect with all the people who I connect with during the week?
In summary, let me share this thought with you. Vital congregations embrace all the generations as a way to share their faith in Jesus Christ. They're inspired by the spiritual insights each generation has to offer, and they look for ways for the different generations to pray, worship, and serve together. I invite you to take a look at the other videos in this Gen2Gen series to get more insights about how you can creatively work with the different generations in your congregations.